how effective is gamification as a strategy to improve employee engagement?
So the thing about gamification and employee engagement is that we all already do that. We're already looking at, how do we put a carrot in front of someone to motivate them to do something? People have been doing it forever, right? Do we pay them more? Do you give them a bonus? Whatever. That's the base level of gamification, right? Give them a prize that they can run towards, mouse and cheese. And the idea of ethical gamification is something that I want to really differentiate here. The thing that I advocate is inclusive, ethical gamification, because so much of the idea of how do we make that cheese more enticing, how do we make it more psychologically just get people to do stuff without them even thinking about it, is how we get the dark trends that we see in gamification today. It's why gamification has a bad rap, because certain companies and certain marketing and advertising agencies learned that they could use the right type of triggers to motivate people to do things that weren't actually in their best interest, just to get them to push a button, make a sale, get them engaged. And you look at places like Facebook. They are the poster child for using public shaming to motivate people for improvement, right? And what does it do? Sure, it can give you some really high production. It can give you some really high producing sales employees or whatever, but it burns out your employees, and it hurts your constituency. It hurts your customer base. So the point of ethical and inclusive gamification is to find ways that bring your people in, that motivate them to want to be engaged in your platform, to want to use your product, but doing so in a way that is actually healthy for them, that gives them a sense of purpose, that brings them to it from a renewable sense, right? It's taking sustainable science and applying it to employee engagement and motivation.
Fantastic. See, having said that, there's also a whole bit of debate happening around talks about organic gamification, wherein people want to apply it probably at the grassroots level, so that people, maybe the customers, they start consuming gamification as and when required, and obviously it can be also customized depending on what the company wants. So how important is customization when it comes to gamification as a strategy to engage customers or engage employees?
I think it's pretty critical. The blanket gamification is essentially, if you look at like the gambling industry, right? That's blanket gamification. How do we make people spend more money without thinking about it? And if you look at, I like to use Yukai Chao's octalysis framework as a recognition of the different ways that people are motivated, and that some of them are really unhealthy and some of them are healthy, and some of them are going to work better in a nonprofit organization versus a for-profit. Your gamification strategy in a sales organization is going to be really different than your funding strategy, which is still about getting money from people. But a development strategy within a nonprofit needs a different gamification strategy. You have to think about it differently. The people there are going to be far more purpose motivated as far as like their connection to the work being done versus the dollars being made. Is this a capitalistic venture, or is this a humanitarian venture?
And I think that that also helps us differentiate and practice what white hat gamification versus black hat gamification is, how the left brain versus the right brain works. I think you guys' work has been phenomenal in that. I also am a part of Octalysis Prime, so I also attending the week-on-week meetings, and I think he's doing a fab job there as well. So there's no doubt about it. But this brings us to a very, very contemporary question, and I think you have often been discussing about this, that the concept of PBL, which is the point badges leaderboard, is often being used every time I see people, and I'm not talking about experts, talking about people who have just heard of gamification or even firms who have applied gamification. They believe that everything starts and stops at PBL. But there's a whole bit of gamification which is unexplored. There's a whole bit of area which people have really not explored. So how do you ensure that people go beyond the contemporary PBL thought process and they know more about gamification in general?
Well, I think you can start with there are games that utilize the breadth of gamification techniques, like Pokemon Go, or and Ingress, right? Pretty much anything that Niantic puts out. You look at Epic Games. I think Epic Games is also a really great example of a company that, sure, they've got the PBLs in their system, but the community is motivated to play by using all of the different strategies of gamification. You've got people that are there for the collectoring. You've got people that are there for the exploring, the socialization. That you create a system that appeals to multiple levels of motivations. And PBLs are really just they're for the competitive people. And I've been writing this piece on the dangers of focusing on competition over collaboration, because competition is really what's been killing us, I think, both as a species nearly, is that we're so blinded by this scarcity mentality that we're only good if we're the best, or we're only good if we're in the top tier of the competitive leaderboard. But it's not about being better than others. It's about getting what you need, as a contributor. If I'm an individual contributor, I'm not a competitive sports player. I don't care about going home with the gold. I actually want to do my job well. I want to do it well, and I want my clients to like me, and I want them to not feel sold, but to be getting what they need as a business that supports them. If I'm just bankrupting my clients by getting them to buy the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, then I'm not thinking about their long-term health. So if I'm focused on points and badges, then I'm giving all of the people in my company this carte blanche to bankrupt our clients at any and all expense, growth all the time. And that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for my clients, and it's not sustainable for me, because eventually you run out of room for growth, and then your employee base that is so focused on meeting that growth percentage, when they can no longer meet it, they then feel like they're not performing, that they're not a good employee anymore, because they haven't hit 20% growth 5 years in a row. Who are we kidding? Who are we kidding? It's not sustainable. And I think we're seeing that globally as an economy. And we have to figure out how to pull back and recognize that this idea of always more doesn't work at the rate of change and the rate of commerce that we've now gotten to globally. It just doesn't work. There's not enough people and money to do it without running ourselves out of motivation and opportunity. We have to find a different way to do it.
That's an interesting thought, T. I think the sense of competition, and I think that has been so much prevalent across sectors. Everybody is trying to run the rat race, and more importantly, win it.
Yeah.
At times, it is not required. I mean, often it is, and I think one of the interesting things which has changed during this current COVID-19 time is that I think I've seen people try to become much more compassionate during these times. But still, there are a lot of businesses which are still trying to say that, okay, see, we survived. So it's good that you survived, but more importantly, have you helped people survive? That's more important question to answer.
Yes. And it's part of why, like, what I've been doing lately is I have this mission of redesigning the rule set, right? Moving us from a competitive mindset to a collaborative mindset. And if you look at the evolution of gaming in general, we're seeing more collaborative games taking really strong foothold. You look at things like Fortnite, and you look at what else Epic Games has created in like the Dauntless model, which is collaborative gaming, players coming together and you're working to defeat the game, not each other. Same with Call of Duty, right? What is the biggest thing that's on the rise right now in Call of Duty? It's zombies. is Call of Duty Zombies, where people get together and it's the same gamer jock frat boy, you know, killer mentality, but it's the players working together to try to solve the game, not defeat each other. And I've got this stack of board games over here that I've been going through. One of my favorites is Galaxy Trucker. And I love Galaxy Trucker as a board game. Vlada Chatful is one of my favorite game designers. He's the creator of Codenames. And what I really like about the games is just their complexity and how much fun they are to engage in. But they're so competitive that when I try to play them with friends, unless they're a very skilled, experienced gamer, all it is a lesson in defeat and frustration. So I've been rewriting the rules of the games to turn them into collaborative games. So how do we take something that is really fun but competitive and turn it into something that is equally fun but collaborative, where you work together as a team, like in Pandemic, to the board game Pandemic, not the pandemic we were just in, but that's also a really good example, right? Like the Pandemic game is now on its third season of these legacy Pandemic games that continue to be about how do you as a team work together to defeat the game, to survive and thrive in the game as a group. Yeah.
I think exactly that makes more interesting thoughts about what and how do we define demons in the game. I think more important for us to define that correctly. Often people get into a competitive spirit, which is definitely nice up to an extent, but prominently when we talk about Ti Wyles, and in fact you are right in saying that if you are at probably the 24th position or 240th position on leaderboard, you don't care. You really don't care. But maybe you are one of the prime reasons why somebody is at number one, because you might be a collaborator of that person.
Yeah.
If you can really make an ecosystem which makes people understand the power of collaboration than competition, I think we will definitely strive better, and in fact make much more digitally, and more importantly our mental health would improve. Right now competition is killing our mental attitude also, for that matter. I think so gamification has a whole bit of scope, and I think I've also been working quite large in this area to understand and more importantly experience what collaboration can help and what positive attitude it can bring on board.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So gamification T is also largely applied at three primary levels: either an individual level, or maybe a group level, or maybe a firm level. So that's also for the kind of games we play. Some of games are individually, we play one-on-one or one versus computer. Maybe a small group playing against a computer, which is what your examples are, Call of Duty also. And then you also try to gamify the entire organization, saying that maybe the entire recruitment process is gamified.
Right.
Yeah. So what do you think is the most challenging when it comes to gamifying the entire process than people?
Can you ask that question again, maybe in a different way? I think I'm missing the hook there.
Yeah. So I'm saying that when we apply gamification, there are three aspects to it: A, gamifying an individual; B, gamifying a group; and C, gamifying a process. So while the first two are often talked about, how can we gamify people through putting the right elements, but then we want to gamify a process as a whole,
right?
And recruitment might be one example, just an example. Or maybe I want to understand how my clients give a feedback mechanism, and I want to gamify the overall feedback mechanism for a company. When it comes to process-based gamification, how difficult is that? What challenges face?
So this is a place where I think the thought leadership in this is still very new, right? I've got a background in lean management and process analysis, and then bringing gamification into that has been something that is challenging. It's challenging to get the people who are so geared to the efficiency of the process to understand that gamification needs to actually change the efficiency. The way that they talk about it in the Octalysis group is if you give the game of golf to an engineer and tell them to design the game of golf, they're going to make it as simple as possible, right? You pick up the ball, you put it in the hole. But what that then takes away is the challenge. We make our processes currently so fast and so efficient that we remove any of the opportunities for skill and personal improvement, personal development. We forget that if you have people involved in your process, and this is that separation, right? If it's an automated AI process, it doesn't need gamification. You want it to run as short and as smooth as possible. But if there's people involved, you need to make the process allow for individual creativity, autonomy, space for the person to improve their skills. And this is where we see the failure of humans as robots, right? You look at like Tyson Chicken, right? This is a really great example, right? Tyson has automated their, chicken cutting process by having one person doing the same cut over and over and over and over again. But why do you have a human doing that? If it's the same cut, you can have a robot doing that, but we have people doing it, and people have no motivation to do the same cut for 10 hours in a row. There's nothing in there that is a challenge, that allows me to grow as a person, that allows me to expand my skill set. So yeah, you're burning through people. They're developing repetitive stress disorders and mental health disorders because they are trying to make themselves do the same mindless task for 8 to 10 hours in a row. That's not how people function well. And in our gamification of processes, it's critical to remember that the motivation of the individual person that is involved in that system is, if you overlook it, you're treating the person as a robot, and then you're burning them out, and you're destroying the resource that you need to be successful.
That's an interesting point, and often a lot of work profiles, and I think you are right in saying that it's just so much monotonous. And a good example is also of a Uber driver, wherein he knows that he has to only drive cars throughout the day, and he knows the routes, he knows everything, he knows what the traffic situation is, and he's the who is driving. I mean, he has to. So, and he will burn out. He will burn out quickly for that matter. So, how are companies doing? How are companies really engaging people like this, who are the front-facing roles because of which the company is surviving? So, I think that gig economy, for that matter, is something which is a whole bit of experience and gamification, which might really change the way gig workers have to be engaged. I think that is something I'm also trying, in fact, working a lot on this area. How can the monotonous jobs be much more made creative? And do we really need gamification there? And if yeah, that's a very, very interesting thought.
So I drove for Lyft and Uber for a couple of years. And one of the things that I really loved about Lyft is that as the onboarding, they give you tips on how to engage with your riders, right? Because if you want the person that's driving to be more than the automated bot that drives the person from point A to point B, right? The one of the strategies was, in order to prevent weird conversations or social discomfort between drivers and riders, you engage as little as possible. Pick up your rider, say hi, drive them to the thing, say thank you for the ride, and don't engage, so that there's not a discomfort. Okay, but that takes out the actual human interaction. It takes out the feedback, like the in-time feedback of, does this person want a faster ride? Is this person have multiple car accidents and they would actually like a slower, like, even if it takes longer to get there, please just, right? And if I engage my rider, then I get to learn about that. And then I'm much more likely to get a bigger tip. They're going to give me a higher rating because they felt seen as a rider, not just as I got in a car and got to where I want to be. And that's that personal side of gamification. It is recognizing that the who we are as players, right? What if you look at, like Bartle's, differentiation between the types of gamers. Are you the killer? Are you the socialite? Are you the explorer? Right? We need to know about that. If I start a board game with somebody and we're going to play a game of Catan, Catan is another one of my favorite examples of how are we playing this game? Are we sitting down? Are you the person who I want to control the whole board? Oh, okay. Well, then we're playing a competitive game of Catan. And so I need to be in the mindset of how am I playing defensively against you so that we're actually having a good game. Otherwise, I'm going to be playing nice and trying to trade with you and engage. I'm going to be a port trader and I'm trying to make sure that everybody has their resources so we can all thrive in the game. And we'll see who wins. We'll see who gets to their victory points first, but we're all trying to play so that everyone has a good time. Or are we playing, all right, this is time to knuckle down and we're going to see who can destroy the other player? Those are very different ways to play the same game. And if we don't take the time to find that out at the beginning, this is one of the things that happens in recruitment, right? When we talk about culture fit, are you asking the right questions to know, are the people you hiring going to be competitive against their own team in order to get ahead? Are they gonna steal clients from their coworkers in order to be the top producer? Or are they gonna be peer mentors and hand off good clients to new employees so that they have an easier leg up and can find success in the work that they do? Which do you want? Like, genuinely ask that question of yourself as a business owner, and then build your recruitment strategy around that.
That's very, very interesting because often I've also seen that, especially when it comes to ride-hailing apps, be it Uber for example or Lyft for example, the drivers often face this often dilemma that should we interact, should we not interact? How will the customer treat me? Will they think that I'm going into their personal territory? If not, then how do I initiate? So I think that bit of training is very, very interesting, and I've seen practically a lot of drivers facing that challenge, and they prefer not to therefore. But that is, and I think that makes them disengaged in the overall process of making the ride and the experience more interesting. They feel that it's my job. I'm doing my job. My job is to pick a person from A, drop the person at point B, maybe get whatever is being. If there's a tip, great. If there's no tip, great. So I think that is the kind of work people are not trained well. And I think that is my next question, which is very, very interesting. That how do you really help, or how do you use gamification to help people understand that how do you begin and when to gamify and when not to gamify? In fact, more importantly, when not to gamify. There are a lot of situations when people think every time I want to boost up engagement, gamification is the key. Maybe not.
Well, and what type of gamification, right? It's not just is gamification, because I think all marketing at one level or another, right? All motivational strategies, if you're engaging in behavioral motivation or motivational design, it's some kind of gamification, right? You're trying to figure out what is the trigger and the response that I'm trying to get. I'm trying to get my person to do more, to sell more, to be on the phone more. What motivations am I putting in place? What's my cheese or carrot that's going to motivate them to do so? Or what's the stick? What's the punishment that's going to get them to do more? And so it's all some kind of game. The question is, what kind of game are you playing? And do you want, we often, because we don't honestly ask that question, we create mechanisms that are actually teaching the wrong lesson. Right? We teach people not to engage because, right, as Uber drivers, we teach people not to engage because we don't want the negative conversations. We don't want the political or sexual harassment or whatever, where the person feels uncomfortable. So we just teach people not to engage, but we don't actually want people not to engage. We want people to be engaged and have a good trip. But we don't want to have the hard conversation of how do we teach people to read body language? How do we teach people how to have conversations that are engaging without creating conflict, right? I'm also a conflict mediator, right? And so, like, helping people understand that the way we ask a question, the language that we use has an impact on our the person we're talking to. So if a person gets in the car and they're focused staring at their phone, or they have their headphones on, I'm not pushing to try to engage them in a conversation. They are clearly telling me that they just want to get in the car and go to point A without being bothered. So I'm not going to bother them. If they're smiling at me and asking me a question, I'm engaging with them. If they get in the car and their body language says something about the music I'm playing, I'll turn it down. I'm not going to force them to be, auditorily assaulted by my music. And perhaps I engage them in, I've got some presets so that if somebody gets in the car with a cowboy hat, I can put on some country music. Right? If they get in the car and they're wearing a Jay-Z t-shirt, I can switch it over to a hip hop station, right? Like maybe, just taking the time to pay attention a little bit to the person around us. And, there's room for recognizing that maybe the shirt they're wearing isn't their only musical taste. Maybe they get in with the Jay-Z t-shirt and they like country music. Those things do happen. People are more than one thing, and we need to allow them to be. And that's a thing that gamification still has to learn as an industry. We as gamification experts get so stuck on, this person's competitive, we need to give them all the PBL motivation so that they go for the top player. But maybe that competitive player is also interested in story-driven gaming. If we give them the opportunity to actually connect to the story. We don't. We just teach people to how to get through things faster, skip the cutscenes, don't pay attention to the meaning of the game. God, the number of people that I meet that have been playing Call of Duty for years, but have never played the campaign ever. I mean, they have no connection to why the game has the characters or the story, anything in it. They're simply playing to get the points and be the best and have a higher level than their friends, or get to the unlocking the special weapons. But they don't know anything about what's happening in the game. This is part of what I do as a gamer coach. So I do coaching for esports players. Is you will find yourself actually enjoying the game more, like connecting to the love of the game, if you slow down. Right? And this is where we need to slow down a lot of our processes. We need to slow down recruiting and hiring so that we get connected to the person that is engaging us as a client, as an employee. Who are they? Because that's where we find where they fit in that Octalysis or Bartle's framework. And if we really understand who they are as a person, as a gamer, then we understand how to motivate them in ways that are sustainable. We know how to meet those white hat motivations. I don't like white hat versus black hat, because then there's all the racist connotations that come with white hat and black hat. But like the core, like the core driven motivations versus the non-sustainable motivations, right? The renewable versus non-sustainable. Yeah, sorry. I just get on this box and I can just keep talking about it for hours.
Very interesting. I think, so this also brings us to this one of the last interesting questions. Often we see that we tend to use gamification or maybe some bit of game element as a blanket for all our employees, maybe the entire set of people. So, example, when we get into recruitment, or when we get onto onboarding as a whole, there will be a exercise which will be given to 200 people, okay, without knowing who can be best at what. In fact, when it also comes to giving the right kind of roles in a company, for example, maybe I know for a fact that he is a person who loves creativity, but I give him more of creative roles because I think he can perform there better. Rather than me saying, okay, he has 5 years of experience, let me put into a senior kind of a role. Maybe it's not a good fit there. So one important aspect which comes in gamification is knowing the personality of people. And often people miss out on this. And so when we talk about gamification, there's a whole bit of human-computer interaction, and human lies at the centerpiece. So how do you ensure that firms or your clients, or for that matter, anybody whom you train, they understand people's personality better before they jump into choosing the right game element? How do you train people on that?
So, there's a lot of new information out there around human intelligence or emotional intelligence. If you look at like the human design theory, if you look at the Enneagram, you look at a lot of like personality profiling models that help us to understand ourselves better, so that we can share that with the people that we work with, right? Yeah, and there's some basic processes. You give managers training on how to ask people how do they like to be rewarded, right? And so that you're giving people rewards that actually support them doing the job that they want, right? If I like being rewarded by being, congratulated in private, or if I like being rewarded by being praised in public, making sure you're giving them the right rewards so that you're motivating the behaviors you want to get, as opposed to motivating, accidentally demotivating them by giving them rewards that aren't rewards for them. So we need to make sure we're getting those questions asked, and that's a very common way that we train managers. So if we're talking about the gamification process, what are we doing to give people an opportunity to share what type of gamers they are, right? Even if they don't think of themselves as gamers, but like, how do they engage in their work? What makes them feel rewarded, valued, that they are doing their job well? Right now, that process is still kind of clunky, right? Either we start people off and we give them a big 118 question Myers-Briggs, profiling test, and then we say, oh, okay, we're going to do the True Colors program, we're going to do this personality profiling, and here's your type. And now we've stuck them in a type, and now we've profiled them in a whole different way, and we don't let them move outside of that. So I think part of the problem is that when we look at psychology as a general science, it's still kind of in its infancy, regarding the larger public accepting that there's real science in it. That there are important things for us to learn, that we're just animals. We have, predictable response patterns of behavior. Marketing and ad industry knows this really well. Facebook knows this really well, right? We look at everything that happened in 2016 with Cambridge Analytica. We know that this is a truth. The general public doesn't really accept that yet. We really like our free will too much to accept that we can be programmed and told what to do. We have to accept that in order to figure out how to reverse engineer it and make it work for us, which is what I feel like you're trying to do at Gamification4all. It's what I'm trying to do as part of this ethical gamification, is how do we use the knowledge we already have on how to use someone's Facebook profiling likes and dislikes that tells us what kind of employee they're going to be for us, and how to help them be a better, how to help them engage in a way that is sustainable and good for them. We have to start using that science for the betterment of mankind, and not just the profit of the people that have access to the data.
That's very interesting. Whom I interest. For example, the MBTI scale or maybe the Big Five personality types becomes a common way to understand people's personality, and often we are misjudged because we are still trying to build on a scale which might be redundant in current scenario. I mean, that might. I'm not saying that. I mean, I'm sure they have done a good job. MBTI has done a good job over the years, but with a kind of, and very commonly, very recently, when COVID-19 struck, everybody was. I mean, I saw a lot of people change the way they used to perform, and the underlying idea of survival of the fittest became everything for them.
Yeah.
So what kind of personality? So I think personality, like moods, are very independent, I would say. They keep changing, and I think the external environment helps us change that. So rather than stereotyping people, it is also more important to understand them as and when they also evolve, and then obviously choose the right platform and the right means to gamify. I think that is critical for a lot of companies which often don't do that. I also feel they haven't been doing that all of that. Fantastically. The second set, this brings us to the second set of questions wherein we intend to know slight bit of more about you. The interesting part of knowing that who inspires you to be in the profession, and are there any personal heroes in the whom you have really, I mean, chased and you wanted to become those kind of people? I mean, those could be from your industry. Those could be Bob Marley. I don't know. I mean, anybody for that matter.
um, yeah, so I would say one of my early role models, they're not popular, possibly because, we discovered that they're human and so they have flaws, right? Which in my childhood, one was Bill Cosby, right? And you look at where he's at now, and it's heartbreaking to see where he's at, and where his path took him. But some of the lessons that came from him so early in his career was this combination of joy and success, right? That we can bring in humor and play into the work that we do. Mary Poppins is another good example, right? I regularly refer to, in every job that must be done, there is an element of fun. You find that fun, and the job's a game, right? That's the line from Mary Poppins, and that mentality has helped me gamify my own life, where I look for places. If I'm struggling with bringing in a habit, I look for ways to put a fun trigger in there so that it becomes a game for myself. And Shel Silverstein is another really great example of that. And these are all, pre-gamification heroes that found ways to bring fun into the work that they do and still be successful. And then later in life, I went to South by Southwest and saw Yukai speak, and I was like, ooh, there's someone who's doing it in this really corporatized way. And at that point, I was, doing my corporate trainings and my consulting work, and I was using card games and board games to teach lessons. And here was someone who's been, studying all of these games in this much larger sense. And that became this nexus point for me to level up the work that I do.
That's it. So any all-time favorite games which you always been playing, and I think I don't know, you probably would like to play it till the last day of your life. Like even I'm on my last day, on my maybe on the half, maybe I'm playing the game. It could be a video game, it could be a card game, it could be a board game, it could be any game for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, and so favorites are hard, right? Because you go by genre. I have some favorite board games and some favorite video games. I'm going to have to say, on the video game scale, Diablo is still one of my favorites because of how you can make it as difficult as you need to make it to still be a challenge, right? You can play a hardcore character where you only get one life. So you have to play very carefully and slowly and really think about each move as you're playing it. Or you can play it with friends on normal difficulty, and it doesn't matter how many times you die, you just respawn and you keep going and you get to play through, right? And it allows for this large breadth of how you want to play it, very socially, very independently, very difficultly. Clash of Heroes is another one. Heroes of Might and Magic's Clash of Heroes puzzle game. I don't know why, but I have continued to download that and play it over and over again with friends for a decade now. As far as board games go, like I said, Galaxy Trucker is one of my all-time favorites. Yeah, I've got a large collection I've got probably 1,000 games in my personal collection, crossing board games and video games and card games. So I could talk about favorites for quite a while.
I think the favorite list itself will take another interview one fine day. We'll definitely discuss on that as well. But what are any instances see wherein you really thought gamification is not cup of my tea, maybe I should quit? Moments of where you think, I'm doing good, but I think maybe I do not fit into the industry. Maybe the industry demands a lot more than what I'm contributing. Any moments of moments wherein you think this all-time low moment, time to quit, but then tomorrow morning I think let's go back. So any specific moments?
Yeah. I recently tried to help the state of Colorado with their pandemic unemployment issue. I went to work for them in the unemployment office and wanted to bring in some gamification concepts and techniques to help get people paid faster and easier, to help gamify this process, and both internally for employee motivation to do the work faster, and then for the claimants, because there's so many people unemployed right now. And I could not seem to convince, I could not explain this in a way that helped them understand how badly the system was currently built, and how much value just a little bit of gamification would add. And I just thought, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I don't have what it takes to do this work if I can't explain it well enough to get that to happen. And ended up, being let go from that position because I was trying to do something, and they just wanted me to keep making the same cut on the piece of chicken, and stop asking questions and stop trying to change the process. And I wouldn't shut up. So they're like, bye, go away. And that was heartbreaking, especially since I was genuinely there just because I wanted to help the people that are in need. But sometimes I think at the end of the day, some people just aren't ready, right? Some organizations have not evolved enough from a sense of corporate responsibility, from awareness of the impact that they have on their people, to recognize that this work has value. They just don't know how to hear it yet. And maybe I need to go back to school. Maybe I need to go get my PhD, so that I can learn what people who have been studying this recently, who've been like in the trenches doing the research work, how do they talk about it in ways that are different than how I do? And so that's kind of part of why I reached out to Gamification4all in the first place, is to be in this conversation more with people like yourself, so that maybe I can learn how to bring this work to people that need it in ways that I'm currently not doing.
And in fact, we are trying our best to do that. I'll quickly brief about when I was doing my PhD at IIT. So I'll take 30 seconds to explain what we were doing. We were trying to understand that how can gamification help people get more engaged into a donation drive especially after a natural disaster. So you may donate once. Maybe US is equally a geography which is affected by natural disasters, right? Hurricanes are pretty common there. Same happens in India as well. So every year there are floods. Every year there is a natural disaster. People tend to donate. Donation is something which we always promote people to do. But you may donate once, maybe donate twice. But can we really make this more of a sustainable habit? When you know that people need, like maybe a $10 donation might really help, but people don't get hooked up to that idea. So we did a lot of experiments, I think in India. So there is recurring disaster happening every year. There are disasters across the country. So my entire 5 year of my PhD work was to design platforms, to enhance platforms and make people much more engaged in this process of simply donating money for a cause which is seemingly practical, which is where the results are visual. We're not talking about abstract things that, okay, if you do this, something might happen, which we really can't see. Whatever you are donating will go to people, their livelihood will improve, and this is how you can help them improve. So my entire 5 years of work was all about that. And the reason why we wanted to bring all such people onto a forum like Gamification4all, because there are a lot of ideas and there are a lot of people who really want to learn from the right people. And that's why people like you are important to us as well. That brings me to an interesting question, which often people ask us, and we wanted to also clarify it from you, that people who want to get into this field of gamification in general, and they are clueless about it. They don't know where to start. So any sort of books, any sort of reading material, courses, people, do you really suggest to people who want to make a career in gamification? Thoughts on that? Because that will help people get a more streamlined approach rather than a random haphazard walk which we usually do.
Oh, absolutely. I would say the first two places to start are The Theory of Fun. I think that book is foundational for anyone to understand the why inside of gamification, not the how. And that's the thing that I think has messed up gamification as an industry, is that people discovered how gamification worked and they used it to exploit their client base and their employee base by just getting them to do the things. But they forgot that gamification is actually about fun. It should be about fun. Are your people engaging in a way that is bringing them joy, in like joyous engagement, not just I'm engaging because you gave me the right triggers, but I'm engaging because you're appealing to the parts of me that want, you're making me want to use your platform. And that's where, like, we talk about the donation pieces. It's not just, can I get you to donate? Can I convince you to push that button that says you're going to be a monthly subscriber? Right? That's that dark trend, negative, thing, and it burns people out on all of those triggers as a whole. You make it so that they're almost not gamifiable. They're almost not motivatable because you've taken away their trust in you as an organization, because you're just going to try to get as much money out of them as you can, as opposed to connecting with them and seeing them not as a donor, but as a participant, as a member, as a valued part of your community. And so theory of fun, and then game storming. There's a recent book that came out that is not about the use of gamification to make your process better, but it's about how to think in a more game oriented way. And I think those two are the best entry points, right? And then you can step into something like actionable gamification, or infinite play, or what these other books that talk to you about the hard science of how gamification works. And it's good stuff, but start with the why. Why are you doing it? And so, theory of fun and game storming.
Definitely, I think I've read both the books multiple times, and always been a pleasure reading that and referring that book. It's refreshing, I would say. I think my experience has always been refreshing. To answer why, more important, I think putting the right question, why, before how, and before what and where, is very vital. And that is, I think people will learn over time, and in fact, they tend to answer the question why now more often than what and how. That's very interesting. This brings us to the last part, and as I mentioned, there's a small game we intend to play, and I don't call it a game as a whole, but still an experience I think you would also probably cherish, and that's basically a rapid fire which we intend to play. Okay. The rules are pretty simple. I'll say a word, and the first word which comes to your mind, connecting that word, you have to give it as an answer. Okay. So are you ready, T? Okay. So first word is travel.
Love.
Engagement.
Fear.
Family.
Everyone.
Risk.
Excitement.
Sport.
Adventure.
Team. Learning. Stories.
Lifetime.
Practice.
Difficult.
Books.
Oh, hard.
Come on. Quick.
Hard.
Okay. Leadership.
Oh, man, I just go blank on that one.
Okay.
I guess engagement. I think of leadership engagement.
Same.
Overrated.
Success.
Complicated.
Love.
People.
Work.
Games.
And personality.
Beautiful.
Fantastic. Thanks, this was great. I think this is it from my side, at least. Manish is back. Manish, I'm sure you did not miss anything, or you'll be definitely a part. It was fun interacting with you. It is always a pleasure. And I've been reading his posts. I've been reading what he's doing. I've also been off lately discussing with people on the Off Prime group about him. So we're all there, a small community out there. But thanks a lot, T, for sparing out time for all of us. I'm done with my set of questions. Manish, if you have any set of questions to ask Pratik,
Uh,
feel free to do that.
I don't really have a set of questions, but I have is only one question. Because you talked about dark side of gamification, and which is one of the rarest things that we have come across, throughout our interviews. So I just wanted to know, how do you see the future of this dark side and bright side of gamification? Will it go along, or is it like dark side would reduce somehow, or how do you see the future of it?
um, I think that there is a large trend in accountability that is going to change the business industry as a whole. I think that the winner take all competitive capitalistic mindset that has been dominating the past 50 to 100 years, we've seen today that it's not sustainable, and we have to make a change if we want to survive as a species, to survive. And that shift is going to happen with us in gamification as well. We have to shift to a more ethical and inclusive mindset, because if we don't, all we're doing is killing our client base, killing our employee base. We're literally driving our best talent to other companies because we're not thinking about them as valued people. A lot of companies say, "Oh, we're a family," but they're not. They don't treat their employees like family. They treat their employees like human resources, and they get as much out of them as they can for as little as they can before they, burn them out or they go somewhere else.